Hi, I'm the Adobe guy, and today is going to be another one of my AutoCAD demonstrations, and this one is going to be using AutoCAD to insert a Lisp file. And this Lisp file is one that takes data from a GPS device, so for example a total station, where you have the ID number, a description, and an XY and possibly a Z value for the point. And what this Lisp does is it actually takes the values and it inserts a block according to the description at the point within the AutoCAD drawing. So the first thing we do is we open up AutoCAD and we're going to import this Lisp file. So we're going to load the Lisp file. So load, and I've just stored it on my desktop and I've called it insert block. So I double click on there, and the first thing it does is it tells me that this is outside the trusted area. Now that's because it's on the desktop. If you're going to use this, then put it inside your AutoCAD third-party file. I'm going to say load, and it tells me it's successfully loaded, and I click close. Now you'll notice here it says it's loaded. If there are any syntax errors in the Lisp file, then it will actually stop at this point. So when you're writing Lisp yourself, or if you're editing it, you'll know as soon as you try and load it if there are any syntax errors. You can say it's going to be perfect, but it is quite handy. Okay, let's take a look at the actual Lisp file itself and see what's in it. So in the Lisp file, I've got various different things in here. So the actual file itself, the command is going to be called insert blocks from CSV. And what it's then going to do is it's going to ask me some information about the number of digits in the ID number. And I'll show you why this is important. If we look at the CSV file that's going to be brought in, is my ID number, all the digits at the beginning, so the numbers are 3 digits long. Now clearly this might vary if you've got more than 100 points that you're bringing in. So if you've got several thousand points you're bringing in, you may need to have 4 digits for your ID number. Now you can set this up on your total station, your GPS, for bringing in the data as to how many digits you have. The block code next is 3 characters, and it's just a code, and now that code must match the layer that I want it brought into in my AutoCAD drawing, and I'll just show you that. So the actual layer that I've got in AutoCAD, if I open the correct drawing, so I'm going to open the drawing which has got this in, which is drawing 1, and you notice here inside the drawing I've got various different layers that are brought in. So you see MHA there, and if I go back to Notepad you'll see MHA as a block. Yep. Additionally, inside my AutoCAD drawing, if I were to go to insert for my blocks, I've put in separate blocks according to all of these codes here. That is necessary. So there's a couple of things you do need to do before you start. Yeah, so these are highlighted inside the Lisp file itself. So open it up in Notepad and actually just have a read through the Lisp file before you try and run it. The first thing you need to do is you need to change the path. So you need to change the word oaks here in the path, which leads to wherever you've stored the CSV file. Okay, and what the code is going to do here is it's going to set a variable PT file, and the value of that variable is it's going to open this file as a read file, and we then set another variable as the first line of data in that file. Now the first line of data in that file, again if I go back to the file, you'll see the top line of data here is just the headings. So I don't want to use that data, so I read the first line. Yeah, this is the first line, and every time I run this command here, see setQ point data read line point file, so there's point file, which is the CSV I opened, read line command. As soon as I do read line again, it reads the line below the one that it last read. So that sequentially reads each line in the file. Okay, so this is the line of data that I want. That's the first line. Now what it's going to do now is it asks me how many digits in the ID number. So remember, in this case we have 3 digits in our ID number. So I just enter 3. And now what it's going to do is it's going to loop until it's run out of data. So it's going to run right the way through the CSV file until it's read every line of data. So this is great because it means it can read thousands of lines of data, insert the blocks for all those thousands of lines of data. It'll insert the block on a separate layer according to the name within that within the CSV file. So you see here that according to that column there, block. Now on some total stations this will be down as a description, but it is important you just put in a code and that you're consistent with the code here. So if I'm putting in 3 digits, my code needs to be 3 digits throughout. Okay. So what the program now does, what the Lisp does, is it sets some various different IDs, and it sets up ID tag, and this will relate directly to the ID tag, which is the first 3 characters. And so what it's doing is it's picking up a substring from within that point data. And remember, point data is that line of data that it's read, and it's picking up from digit 1 for the following number of digits, which is whatever my input is here. So if I'd input 3, it goes from character 1 for 3 digits, and that then becomes my ID tag. It then goes on to the next one, and it's setting a block code, and this is the block here. So this will be the code that I've put in as a description for each point. Now you'll notice this starts at character 1, 2, 3, 4, starts at character 5, and it goes for 3 digits. But it doesn't necessarily always start at character 5, because what it actually starts at is the length of that ID code plus 2, and then goes for 3 digits. So if I then go back to AutoCAD again, I'll go back into the Lisp file. The block code is a substring point data, ID digits, which is the length of my ID code, plus 2, and it goes for 3 characters. Now if you want to change it, if your ID code is longer than 3 characters, simply change this to reflect how many digits it is, and you will have to add on here as well however many you've added on to the first one. Yeah. The insertion point then is another substring, which is point data, and it's ID digits plus 6, and that reflects the start character here. So that is these 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, which is the block code plus 2 commas plus 1, and then we start there. Okay. Right, let's have a look and see what this actually does. Once it's got those various different bits of data, we change the layer to a layer that matches the block code, and if you remember in AutoCAD I've got these layers already set up. It then inserts a block, and the block name again matches block code, and again if I say insert block, it picks from these, so these already have to be in the drawing. When it eventually closes down. Okay, so what it then does is it puts in a block at the XYZ point. Now if you've only got X and Y points, it doesn't matter, it'll just ignore the Z point, but if you've got X, Y and Z, it'll also put that in. It then changes the layer to the layer ID, so you need to have a separate layer for ID as well, and what it puts on this layer is the ID number, and that, going back to the data again, is this first number here. You can choose not to put this in if you like, in which case just rem out this statement here and this one here. When I say rem out, I mean just put in 2 semicolons and it'll just ignore that. The reason I'm saying that is because actually once you've brought the data into AutoCAD, the ID number itself is fairly irrelevant. Bring it in if you want, but you don't have to. It then goes on and reads the next line of data and loops back to the start and does the same thing, so it inserts a block for each row of data in the CSV file. Okay, the last bits of code are just to close down and tidy up, so it closes down the file and it sets your layer back to 0, finishes the function and clears the cache. Okay, let's have a look at this in action then. In AutoCAD, I've gone manage, loaded my block, Yep, and that loaded fine, no problem. So now I'm going to run the block, and if you remember, it's called Insert Blocks from CSV. Now, of course, you can change this to whatever you like. I click on Insert Blocks from CSV. It asks for the number of digits in the ID number. We said that was going to be 3. Press Enter. Now, what it's doing now is it's opened up that CSV file, so you need to make sure the path to the CSV file matches wherever your CSV is on your machine. It then brings in a block according to the block description. It puts in a different type of block, and it puts it in at a point. Obviously, the base point on the block matches the XYZ coordinates, and it also brings in an ID number. Now, the beauty of having this stuff all on different layers is I can turn on and off different layers. So, for example, if I don't want the ID numbers, I just turn them off. If I don't want anything other than my blue layers, which might be water features, I can turn off everything else accordingly. And you'll see from here, this is clearly a survey that carried on down a road and round a corner. Yeah, and I'll just turn these other layers back on, just so they're all visible. And that really is all there is to it. Do get in touch if you want a copy of this Lisp file. Just send me a message with your email. I can't add it on as a comment because the file's obviously too long. Just send me an email and I'll send you the Lisp file. Please do feel free to edit it as you see fit. I'm the Adobe Guy. Thank you for listening.